let's work through this whole cycle. I recognize that I have introduced a lot of steps here. So let's work through the entire cycle of like beginning to end of what happens here. Okay? First thing, I have search params here, right? So this gets rendered for the first time. It gets all this information. It sets all these hooks up. So the first state is going to be location is Seattle, Washington. Breeds is going to be an empty array. And animal is going to be a dog. And breed is going to be an empty string, right? It's then going to schedule this use effect, but this is not actually going to happen yet, right? This does not run on the first render, okay? Then it's going to return all of this markup, right? And it's going to finish that. It's going to render that all out to the DOM, so the user is going to see all of this first, okay? Then, after that, it's going to run the schedule effect. Keep in mind you can have 10 effects in here, right? Right now we just have one effect, but you could have many effects in here. So after the first render, it's going to call this function right here. So this is going to set breeds to be empty array. It's going to call set breed to be an empty string. And then it's going to go out to the API with animal, and it's going to get breeds back from the API, and then it's going to call set breeds. But keep in mind, like, this is going to take some time, right? This will take a second or something like that, right? So what's going to happen is it's going to render, and then a second later, once this comes back with the breed strings from the API, it's going to cause another re-render, right? But the only thing that's changed here is breeds. Does this particular effect depend on breeds? No. Right, so it doesn't re-render the next time, right? Because breeds changed, but animal, set breed, and set breeds, none of these changed, right? So it just runs that effect once and then it's done. Okay? So now fathom for a second that I go and I type into location, right? So now location has updated state. And it goes here to use effect, and it says, hey, has animal, set breed, or set breeds changed since last time I ran this effect? No, right? So it does not schedule this effect to run again. Good so far? Okay. Then I go in and I select animal to be, it was dog and now it's cat. So it's going to re-render, but it says, hey, did animal change? It did, right? I changed it from dog to cat. So it's going to immediately set breeds to be empty array and empty string, and it's going to then call the API, get the new breeds back, and it's going to re-render again after that. That make sense? So this is how use state and use effects can work together to kind of manage these kind of state updates.
So for the dependency array that determines if use effect is run, if that function is run, when we put in set breed and set breeds, we're just saying basically it's if those were reassigned, then it would rerun it.
I had it's funny that you bring this up. I had an at-length discussion with a couple of the React core team members of like, I think that's silly because that's never going to change. And they basically said, we don't care, do it anyway. I would think this is better because this is more clear about your intention, right? Only run when animal runs, but you're going to get an error of set breed needs to be in there. So I gave up. This is what the community is doing, so I'm teaching you what the community is doing. I mean, in theory, it's not a bad idea, right? Like, I guess in theory it could be updated or something like that, but whatever. I don't know.
So it's just looking for any external variable that you're using in that function.
Right. So the idea here being that I have set breed, right? And if I'm using set breed because it's defined in here inside of this function itself, that means if any times if this set breed does change, it should rerun the effect. Which is true of animal, right? Anytime I'm using animal here, so anytime the animal changes, I need to rerun the effect. So that's what they're chasing after. this will save you bugs, right? Because if I didn't have animal in here, actually this would be a good thing to show you. So if I take animal out of here, it'll request it the first time and I'm going to get, Australian Shepherd, right? But if I change this to be cat now, it's not going to update, right? Because it's not going to go back to the API because it thinks like, oh, I'm good, right? I don't have to change because I don't depend on animal.